an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Evolve, Chapter 10, and only Chapter 10. It's a pretty long chapter. In this chapter, how many times can I say chapter? We have an interesting conversation between Jill and Ryan, and Jordan meets somebody new and has an odd reaction. What's up, Jordan? Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Heather for commissioning this episode. What's up, Heather? So this is like, I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit because I do that. I'll do that thing where I just like go to the thing that I'm most interested in talking about, and then I go back and start at the beginning. Real quick, what is the deal with this new hot man? Because Jordan even wonders if there was some sort of like pheromone thing going on, if this is a power that he has. Is it? Or is there something else going on? Like, we don't really know this dude. Is he a good guy at all? Like, we don't know anything. Could there be something going on to try and distract her purposely? There are a lot of questions. And I really enjoy her, like, not knowing how to handle it. It's a really weird feeling. If you've been in a relationship for a long time, you just sort of, it's not to say that you just don't notice people, because of course you notice people, but you don't, like, attempt to connect with people in a flirtatious way that tends to give you that, like, frisson. You know? And if you don't actively attempt to make that happen with somebody because you're looking for a relationship, it doesn't usually happen at all. And then every now and then you'll come across somebody who it happens without your, like, by your leave. You did not attempt for this and you didn't want it and you don't like that it's happening, and yet you still have this, like, moment. It's been a minute for me since I've had this, but it's definitely happened where it's just like, you know, flushed face and just like, I can't even look at this guy because I feel like I completely lose track of my mouth and I don't know how to talk anymore. So, I'm really just super curious what this is going to turn out to be. It's like my main concern right now, honestly. So, backing up again, chapter 10. So they're in the US here, right? At this point, they're expecting something to go sideways, said Douglas. As the car passed the machines, he shook his head. Look over there. They've got gunships being prepped as well. We get a long description of these gunships and all of the various features that they have. And it's the kind of thing that I imagine this would be. Heather, have you seen that there's like a Twitter account for like the US military, and they will sometimes like tweet pictures of a fucking ship dropping bombs and be like, we call this model the Angel of Death. And they're genuinely posting this shit on Twitter. Like, isn't this cool? Like we're talking about micro machines or transformers to a bunch of 12-year-olds. And it's like, but where did those bombs land, though? How about we talk about that part, guys? But no, we're just going to act like these are just toys with no, like, consequences to the fucking shit they do. So I just, like, kept having that in my head. A flight of 6 sleek black aircraft streaked in from the south, surrounding a larger black jet aircraft. The smaller craft were arrow-shaped and not much larger than a delivery van with short wings and a 2-person cockpit. Hard angled surfaces that were typical of stealth aircraft dominated the construction of the escorts, and none appeared to have visible weapon systems. So these sound kind of cool, you know? And Jordan looked away from the unusual aircraft as she followed the Humvee. Do you suppose we gave that to them? Douglas shrugged. Or they gave it to us. I've never seen those smaller ones before. Some sort of vectored thrust gunship. If you say so, sir. I have no opinion on the matter. So, they get out of the Humvee, and this dude is asking if they need anything before they head in. He was like, do you have anything with you want us to carry? And Jordan is just like, I just want to know when our team is joining us. Do you have an ETA? And he says, no, but I can find out. And as he turns away to make a call and find out, she looks at Douglas, and he's got this like super serious expression on his face. And she's like, hey, man, you're off-putting. Like, so what are you doing? And he smiles, and it's like so much worse. And she just is like, all right, forget it. And she tries to make a joke. You look like you're about to lock me in the boot and take me to your dilapidated old warehouse. Jordan had hoped the comment would put a genuine smile on Douglas's face, but it didn't. Yeah, this is one of those things. If you are somebody who uses humor as a coping mechanism a lot of the time, if you get angry enough, you'll break through to the other side of that where you no longer can see humor in anything. Like, there's just this sort of, it crosses over. I can use coping mechanism up to like about an 80% point. And once I get past that point of like stress and rage, disappointment, whatever, all of a sudden, not only am I not making jokes, but you make a joke at me and I'm going to be so irritated. I'm going to be like, why are you, shut up. Like, I'm just going to have no patience for that shit at all. I just really relate to Douglas on this. Aftermath had escaped Europe after killing Portsmouth and the others and hadn't been seen in weeks. The world had gone back into quiet complacency, content to move on after what had been made out to be an isolated criminal attack on a London business. Then, Japan had happened. The major news outlets played the footage of the rescue workers pulling broken bodies from the wreckage of the Tokyo Metropolitan Campus every hour on the hour for days. It was as brutal to see the images of grieving as it was to see the dead. Jordan had cried, not openly in front of her teammates, but in the privacy of her own home in Brian's arms. Her husband just held her, being a strong shoulder in one of Jordan's rare moments of unshielded emotion. At first, it helped, but soon enough, Jordan was replaying all her actions since joining Pendragon. No matter how many times she reviewed what they had done, she came to one conclusion. The team had failed. They had failed the Japanese. She had failed them. Jordan fought the urge to walk through the fight on the Dunlevy for the umpteenth time. Yeah, there's a point later where everybody's getting caught up in like, well, we should have done this. And she says something like, unless you've got a time machine, let's just focus on what's happening now. And I really like how like to the point that is. That's the kind of thing that I really need to kind of make myself stop and do, because I think we all get caught up in thinking about how things should have gone or things that we regret doing this way or that way. And we don't really stop and think about what a complete waste of time that tends to be. It's not always a waste, because sometimes you learn something and you're like, wow, I thought this was smart and it really wasn't. And next time I won't do that. But a lot of the time it's just us brooding over something. And I know for me, and I'm not alone in this, when you're in the shower, you'll have these like, oh, I wish I said XYZ during that conversation. Or I wish that I had stood up to so-and-so about this thing because I just didn't say anything. And you create a whole fucking like fake scenario in your mind of what would have happened if you had handled it that way. And it's like a weird indulgence because you're partially fantasizing, right? it would almost definitely not go a way that you predict it would go. People are unpredictable sometimes. So that's just pointless. And also, you'll get yourself sort of hype in this like scenario about how it went. And then you have to come crashing back down to reality where you didn't do or say that. And it's even like lamer now that you didn't do or say that because you have this whole idea of how it could have been. And it just wasn't. So yeah, just the trying to focus on the now. It's so hard to do, you know, and I am an overthinker anyway. So that line just got to me. I liked it. So, ETA is 2 hours. My orders are to get you situated in the briefing room and give you access to the network so you can start data gathering. Douglas glanced at Jordan. 2 hours, huh? What do you think that's about? Jordan shrugged. Not sure. Maybe they haven't had time to sort through all the intel. Maybe the Americans just want to remind us who's in charge. This genuinely makes me nervous. I don't know. This fact that this 2 hours, I feel like that's going to mean something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, reading too much into it. She took note of the direction they were heading in and the type of security measures they had in the area. All of it was typical fare. Cameras with speed domes, motion sensors, and a card reader for the doors. The door had 2 guards on it. The door had 2 guards on it as well, both men dressed in camouflaged BDUs, black and white MP bands on their left arms. Each of the men had a sidearm and a radio and looked straight ahead. Is this where we'll be doing the bulk of our work? The lead soldier shook his head. I don't believe so, ma'am. The OIC said you were to be taken to a secure, orderly room that had computer access. So they find, this like rather empty room. It's got the tools that they need in it, but other than that, not much. And he tells them that he'll be right outside if they need anything. And Douglas immediately starts asking for stuff. We're going to need the local traffic camera and civilian camera recordings around the Capitol building for the last 10 days. And he replies, I believe that the special agent they're sending to head this up will have that data for you. Believe? Douglas asked in a harsh tone. Douglas, calm down, okay? Using the word believe, that's a figure of speech. That's a polite way to be like, yeah, we know. Like when somebody's asking for something and you're trying to say, we're on that, somebody's doing it, you say, I believe so-and-so's taking care of that. That's how you're nice. It's just a thing. And he's acting like believe means that either this guy like doesn't know for sure, which I don't think that's what it means. And also, like, it's insulting personally. Chill out, guy. And Jordan finally says, we'll work with what we have until your special agent arrives. What was their name again? The sergeant couldn't hide the look of helplessness on his face. I don't have that information, ma'am. My apologies, but this operation is above my pay grade. And I just felt bad for this guy, So William held his hand up to forestall the comment he saw forming on Jordan's lips. I know, that was rude. I'm just not a fan of this bureaucratic rubbish. As if I am? We can't do anything until Chance and the Americans get here, William. You may as well sit down and relax. And here I thought I had a lack of patience. I'm sorry, Jordan. Every life this bastard takes is on my hands. How so? Because I failed to put an end to him when I had the chance. Because I didn't just break his goddamn neck. Jordan stood and circled around the desk. Will, murdering an unconscious man isn't right. You did your job. You brought him in, and he was locked away. The blame here rests on the person that hired Crimson Shark's men to recover Aftermath and the other prisoners. Look, in my intellectual mind, I know that murdering an unconscious man is not right. But I'm fine with not being right all the time. And that's one of the only times you will ever hear me say that out loud. That I'm fine with not being right. But no, honestly. Like, this is one of those things where There's a moment in the Dresden Files where it's a short story, and Harry, who is the main character, is with his friend Michael, who is he is basically a warrior for God. He's a Knight of the Cross. And he is a good, kind-hearted, fair-minded, really just, compassionate man. And somebody kidnaps one of his daughters. And it sort of is like an all bets are off situation where Michael is about to literally kill the man. Like, genuinely so overcome with rage that he's going to do something that Harry knows Michael will regret forever and will sully his hands. And Dresden stops him and says, "No, Michael, if you want to do this, I'll do it, but I'm not letting you do it." And there was something really moving about that for me. The idea of somebody being willing to have the blood on their hands because they're trying to keep their friend's hands clean, because they know what it would do to their friend if it were them who did it. And so they're sort of sacrificing their own like purity in a way in order to spare them that. And there is something to that to me. You know, I feel like we have a sort of, and I can run into this myself because I'm like, in theory, against the death penalty, because I believe our government and our like judicial system is deeply racist and flawed and full of liars and, you know, power hungry monsters. So I don't believe in capital punishment in that respect. However, there is a point where I'm like, certain people just shouldn't be alive. Them being alive makes the world worse and more dangerous for everyone. And I genuinely think it would be better without them. I really do. And who has to take them out then? Who decides that, first of all, is always the question. But then, like, the person who actually does it. And I wouldn't be mad if Douglas was like, you know what? Maybe it wasn't the right thing to do, but maybe it was, even though it wasn't. You know, things like this, I just don't, it's not like Douglas hasn't killed people at all. So, you know, there's a sense for me of just like, I can't like be that, I can't draw a line in the sand as to like, these people deserved it, but this guy didn't, just because he was unconscious. No, that doesn't hit for me. We know what he did. We know what he can do and what he has done and what he's planning on doing to a point. I don't care if he's unconscious. Like, the guy is who he is, awake or asleep. Doesn't matter. Heather says, not his biggest fan, but I found this quote from Moffat, Doctor Who showrunner, that fits Michael in that moment. Demons run when a good man goes to war. Oh, yeah, I remember this one. Night will fall and drown the sun when a good man goes to war. Friendship dies and true love lies. Night will fall and the dark will rise when a good man goes to war. Demons run, but count the cost. The battle's won, but the child is lost. I remember that episode. Yeah, I just like, I just really struggle with this. I used to be somebody who was really hardline. No, don't kill people. Everybody's redeemable. Whether they choose to be redeemed or not is not really any of your business. But there is potential in everybody. And I've just grown to really feel like, no, not everybody's redeemable. There are people who aren't interested and they are actively out here harming and encouraging harm. I think that's just not worth the risk. You know, there's a point at which you're sort of sacrificing people in order for this person to get redemption. And that doesn't feel fair. Why are certain people up for grabs just because this one person deserves another chance? That doesn't seem right to me either. So I don't know. I just go back and forth about this. And this, when she says like it's the person who hired Crimson Shark's men, He's like, yeah, and we have no fucking idea who that is. You and Chance didn't turn up shite that we could use to track down his employer, so now Aftermath's killed James, killed Breyer, is going on a fucking world tour of murder. Here we are, sitting in a room watching bloody telly and surfing the internet instead of working the scene like we need to be. And Jordan is stung by this. The mercenary and his men had remained utterly silent since their capture. None of them had asked for attorneys or food or water. Every phone, radio, computer, and storage medium that the men had on them when they were captured had been put through every test and scan that the techs at Pendragon could think of, but Tretjak's people had been smart enough not to carry important data on their devices. Tretjak's personal phone had immediately fried itself when a tech had powered it on. Lyndon had determined the device had a DNA scanner built into it so that Tretjak and Tretjak alone could use it. That is wild. Like, I understand being in his position and wanting something like that in place, but can you imagine if you forgot that that was on your phone and you were just like, hey, can you just see who that text was from? I'm sorry, I have to wash my hands. And then your phone's just fried because they just were like, yeah, let me check. Oh, no. Oh, God. Jordan had felt just as helpless then as she did now, and she hated that feeling. It was against her nature not to act. All that's true, but we need to soldier up. We can't be everywhere at once. We don't have anyone who can see the future, so the best we can do is handle what we have in front of us when it gets in front of us. And she manages to sort of like knock him out of the headspace he's in and get focused again. And again, the whole like focus on what you can do right now, it's just the kind of advice that is often really what needs to be said or understood, but it's just hard to see that when you're in the moment. So they begin working on their two separate projects. He says, I'll start checking online video sources, and she says, I'll start on a timeline. 2 hours seemed unusually short, considering the fact that all Jordan and Douglas had to work with was a handful of YouTube videos and some still photos. Ryan was still doing her deep dive, according to a text message, and didn't expect to have everything for another 5 hours, so Jordan focused on analyzing the words that Aftermath used during his killing spree. And this is when she talks about the word sleeper. And she has the same reaction to it that I do, where it's like, well, I guess it makes sense. But there is something that she's realizing is like, it seems like she was wondering if maybe Aftermath was just grandstanding. Like, it says, it suggested that Aftermath's desire to create a separate culture was probably more than some show to scare people. And yeah, we've been in his head. He genuinely believes that he's a god, should be worshipped, and that regular people are just like there for his use or others' use. Like, he really truly thinks that. So she had thought maybe this was all meant to be a sort of like, you know, it was a, like I said, grandstanding. And she's realizing that if he's using terms like this, probably there's something really there. Jordan frowned as she envisioned the term being used by Awakened like a racial slur. Things like that caught on very quickly, and thanks to the internet, it would spread far and wide. The word was a wedge to divide the superhuman from the human, and words had tremendous power. So, we had human and metahuman. But because they both have the word human in them, yeah, it doesn't really have the same effect, does it? It is just a different thing once you, especially because it's coined by somebody who is awakened. So there's just a different energy to it, you know? It's not like they're naming themselves. And that's always the way with slurs. It's something that's thrown at you by the person oppressing you. So they hear somebody coming, Chance and Lily. And they talk for a minute about, because she's like tidying up her appearance and Douglas is sort of teasing her about it. And she's like, well, you could shave. And he's like, your sister seems to like it. And before she can respond, Lily and Chance come in. Chance, it turns out Lily has like a crush on him. And she does this like, you're so silly, but you're charming though, later on. And I was like, oh, Lily, what are you doing? Evidently Chance is a big hit with the ladies, which he seems very charming. And I am always a sucker for a guy with a sense of humor. Like, that's just my kryptonite. A guy does not even have to be that attractive in general. And if he's super funny, that just ups his hotness level by like at least 5 points. Like, it's just, for me, it's like an exponential thing. Because to me, humor is an indicator of intelligence also. And it's also a way to tell that somebody has some like self-awareness and is able to put things in perspective depending on the type of humor. It's, for me, just a major thing. So yeah, I can understand, because Chance is sort of the most lighthearted, and he has an ability that's like, it's not, he's obviously really strong and fast and everything, but he doesn't have a physical power the same way everybody else has a physical power, which makes him feel a little bit less threatening, I think, in that way. And that could be, it could go either way, but I could see how that might make him feel a little bit more accessible, I guess. So Lily bounces in and she's so excited. And Jordan has to be like, girl, look, I know you're excited, but people are dead. Like, you need to tone it down, because they're going to think we're being disrespectful if you're just like grinning from ear to ear when they come in. And let's see. When do you guys tell me how to know when to be overly excited and when not to be? Jordan wasn't sure how to feel. She tended to be more reserved than most of the team, and she understood the importance of etiquette and manner. However, she did try and inject humor now and again. You just have to feel when the time is right. Some people make light of everything because that's their coping mechanism, and you should just watch the tone of the room and act accordingly. So they start to get to work, and she's talking about like finding Aftermath, trying to, match his face from the angles that they've got on the videos that they have managed to track down. I want to check the scene out after we meet with the Americans. Chance, did they give you any idea of when that would be? They said 20 minutes. Apparently, they've been here for a few hours, but we're in the process of gathering information and waiting for their team lead to arrive from Washington. So Jordan tells Lily that she's going to come with her and Douglas to the scene. And Jordan mentions here that like Ryan has suggested that they set up camp there. And she's like, I think that's a really good idea. Chance sort of was like, would she have what we need? And Douglas chimes in and is like, oh yeah, 100%. And she's like got all kinds of clearance. It's going to be fine because he's got to know her. And they went out for coffee and it seems to have gone well. So he's going to see her again. And I'm just like, all right, let's see how this goes. I'm interested. I had forgotten, let's see. Chance says, you want to risk adding a Douglas to the family, Jordan? We could do worse. And she says to Douglas, she hates dancing more than I do. I'll remember that, Douglas chuckled. So, is she awakened? I don't know why I thought he would know. I keep forgetting that the sisters are keeping it secret. And we find out later with Jill and Ryan together that they, even though they each know they can do things, they haven't told one another the extent of what they can do. In some cases, because they don't know the extent of what they can do. And the fact that he is asking this question, I just was caught off guard. And then I was like, oh, right. Weird. So we have this moment of Jordan like thinking about Lily and how she's struggled to kind of come to terms with what has happened. And there is a tension between her and her father. It had taken months to restore her confidence, and even then, Jordan had seen Lily sleeplessly stalking the halls at night. Which, yeah, I can imagine. It's like the sort of thing that happens after trauma. It's not something that I think I can understand when it's like that kind of thing. Watching people you love get in your home, get threatened with death. Like your parents are saying goodbye to you because they're that sure they're about to go and get shot. So here we have this moment. The sound of the door unlatching startled Jordan. She hadn't heard anyone walking on the tiled hallway floor or cross through the security door from the hangar, but somehow they were opening the door. I don't like that. I don't know that this is like at all important, but I don't like it. Something about the fact that she just didn't hear anything, it set off alarm bells for me. She could make out the two soldiers that had escorted them down the hallway chatting about a mixed martial art fight, but whoever was at the door managed to arrive there without a sound. Jordan looked towards the opening door and felt her throat go inexplicably dry as the achingly handsome man that stepped through it gave her a lopsided smile. It was hard to pick out his nationality. The darker color of his skin could have indicated a dozen different ethnic groups, a perfect appearance for a spy. The confidence in his intense green eyes mirrored the certainty of his posture as he shut the door quietly behind him. "Sorry for the long wait," he said in a warm voice, and inclined his head to the room in general. "I'm Special Agent Jason Blackwell of Division 10. Jordan didn't respond immediately, and she was entirely oblivious to Chance and Douglas glancing at each other before looking at Jordan directly. It took effort to swallow, and Jordan licked her suddenly dry lips as she tried to find her voice. Chance spoke up to cover Jordan's unexpected silence. Yeah, it takes a second. And finally she manages to snap out of it a little bit. But even then, she holds this guy's, she shakes his hand and she's thinking about how he's got a high metabolism because he seems warmer than average, which of course made me get really suspicious because I'm just aftermath in disguise, which I'm sure isn't possible, but I'm paranoid. What can you do? Jordan felt warmth spread throughout her cheeks and realized she was blushing. Nothing worse. This is what I'm talking about when I'm saying it's an involuntary response to some people. You can't help it. You just flush. It's like a sudden, and it's so annoying because you can't do anything about it. It just happens. Blackwell smiled at Jordan as he noticed her reaction and held her gaze a moment longer than was necessary. Oh, did he now? She's married, okay? Back off, Blackwell. I like Brian. I don't want her to do anything stupid. That said, I wouldn't be mad if she was crushing on a dude. That'd be kind of fun. I'm fine with this. So this moment, they talk about Ryan and the, suggestion that they set up shop there. And Jason knows who she is and suddenly realizes that there's a resemblance between her and Jordan. As long as it's a secure location, I'll be bringing 2 other people. We've had an incident down in Texas and had to send most of our resources in that direction. At this point, we don't think they're related to Aftermath's attacks. So here comes a thing. Between this and some other stuff, Douglas gets real irritated at the fact that they aren't given all the information and aren't given the opportunity to assess for themselves whether or not Aftermath is involved. And I understand they're feeling territorial about Aftermath because they are the ones who had him in custody to begin with. And so, of course, Douglas already has this personal thing, but then just in terms of Britain, I can understand that as well, being well, this is sort of our guy. We're working with you, but he's, we're the ones that he's one of ours. But I also understand Jason's position of just being guys, we're trying to be nice here and work with you, but it is absolutely not within your purview to simply demand a bunch of confidential information. That's not something that you have the right to ask. And acting pissy that we aren't giving it to you is just low-key unprofessional. And yet, a little bit later, he makes it clear that the fact that certain information wasn't shared with them is not what he would have chosen to do. So they talk about what they've got so far. Our intel indicates he's operating with Roughshod, Calamity, and Faultline, as well as Frederick Dean, who calls himself Torque, and Janice Largo, who's going by Decibel. This is the kind of thing that, you know, and this is just the trope of like superheroes, that they have a code name. And what I find really funny here is that usually it's a code name to like mask who they really are and protect people or protect themselves. And the fact that we know everybody's like full on government first and last name makes the fact that they're going by code names somehow very ridiculous to me. I mean, I understand the impulse, but I also feel like it's goofy as fuck. And just at the same time, I'm assuming that, you know, Janice, who goes by Decibel, has some sort of sound associated power. I can understand, if you're trying to be taken seriously, how being like, oh no, Janice is here, might not really like hit. It might not strike terror into the hearts of your foes. So like, you know, on the one hand I get it, but on the other hand it's like somebody trying to give themselves a nickname in a friend group. It's just a little embarrassing, you know, like if the press decides on a thing, if Facebook decides on something, if Twitter decides on something, fine. It's now the zeitgeist, but you trying to be like, my name is Decibel. Is it Janice? So he says, my team's been tracking Torque and Decibel for the last 2 weeks, watching their every movement and running down anyone they've met with. Right now, they're in California near San Diego. They've been keeping a low profile in general, though they met with Roughshod and Faultline 2 days ago for roughly an hour. And this is when Douglas is like, oh, really? Well, we didn't get that info. And if we had, we could have told you Aftermath was in the area and that he has known Largo for years and they've worked together. And again, Blackwell is just like, yeah, they said that it wasn't necessary to share that intel, but there's an expression on his face that makes it clear that he didn't really agree with that decision. And so she steps in because Douglas is beginning to sort of rev up and get mad again. And she's like, mistakes have been made. And this is when she says, unless we have a time machine, let's like focus. And she's asking whether they were able to like keep an eye on Faultline. And because obviously they're in California, like this is a really bad spot for a guy like him to be. And I believe it's Lily who asks something about like, maybe he's flying somehow. And that way you're not able to track him because apparently he has like a little seismic leak, the way the Aftermath has like a heat signature that's distinctive. And they try and check the readings and detect where he is based on that. And they're like, well, Aftermath's already used the fact that we know that stuff to lure us once. And then Lily's like, yeah, he might know that we think that. And it's like, you know, there's so many, he knows that we know that he knows they know, but they don't know that we know that he knows that they know, that kind of thing, you know? But yeah, she's like, maybe he's just not setting his foot on solid ground, and that's why you haven't been able to track him down. And later on, it looks like he's been on a boat. So, yeah, she was right. It was just like, you know, the means of transport that she didn't have. And let's see, there aren't enough of us to hold power, not worldwide, Blackwell replied. Strategically, the numbers don't work. Nobody in a first world government is going to buy it, that it could even happen. They're worried about wholesale destruction and slaughter, but not some sort of awakened coup. And Jordan is like, yeah, and I think Aftermath knows that, but it scares people, and that's what he's trying to do. They're revving people up for some reason. And they just don't really know what it could be, what it is that is being attempted here. There's obviously something is being set up, and they just can't figure out what the fucking motive is. So they start like looking for, because she's like, well, obviously power and money are going to be behind this. And we need to start looking for people who are cashing in on whatever is being done somehow. And Blackwell's like, cashing in is such a vague, like that could mean so many things. And his assertion is, I still think he's trying to divide us so he can remove an obstacle. Eventually we're going to either figure him out or get lucky. I would add to the terror he's inspired if the current awakened teams were killed or so badly beaten they were ineffective. He's already shown that law enforcement can't touch him, so the people would feel powerless and desperate. So, yeah, I could see that if he just wants to make a display of how completely he, like, smashes them, which means that he has to be pretty fucking confident he can do that, and I'm not excited about why he feels this confident. Like, and no offense to our team here, but, like, nobody's powers here are as impressive. The one exception is Lily, and hers is such a danger to everyone, it doesn't feel as if it's, like, targeted. Aftermath can, like, light people on fire from yards away with a thought. And I feel like, Jordan, you're very fast. You're very, and you can turn invisible, which is dope. But I don't know, man. It's just not really. We've got some real cool powers happening over here. Fault line, like, I don't know, man. I don't think that you guys are. You're gonna have to recruit some more. I'm just saying. Ryan is like one of the few that I feel like measures up in any way. And also Jill, we don't really know what she can do here, but, and basically Jordan asks for Jason to like give Ryan access to everything because she can do a ton of the like facial recognition search. So we have, then we go to Ryan's house. And her eyes are like whited out the way that they are, like Bran when he's warging, essentially. And Jill is watching from like outside the door, very creeped out. She does not like seeing her sister tapping in and basically like becoming part of the network. But her sister Ryan is aware Jill is standing there and like says, "You can come in, Jill," over the speakers in her like normal voice. Like it sounds like her if she were just talking out loud. But nevertheless, she doesn't move her mouth. It's coming over the speakers. And Jill is like, oh my God, that is so creepy. Oh, I hate this. So Jill comes in. She has crullers, which are still steaming when she sets them on the table. I would really appreciate it, Heather, if your husband could stop with the food because I wanted those crullers and it was very distracting. I couldn't, like, I haven't had a cruller in a minute. And I haven't had a hot cruller in like years. It's prime hot cruller season in Connecticut right now. Middle of October. Like it doesn't get more crullery than it does right now. But I haven't been in Connecticut in 7 years. You guys don't even know. And the cider, like we have cider here. It's not the same, man. It's not the same. Oh, it killed me. So Jill, who all of her power is around life, organisms, is very uncomfortable in this extremely clean room. And by clean, I mean sort of like medically dust-free clean. It's even like colder than she wants and the air tastes weird to her. Like everything about this is just uncomfortable to her. And Ryan, at one point, Jill uses her ability to like look at Ryan's brain and realizes like, holy shit, there's like 20 times more synapses firing in Ryan's brain than in an average person. And there's a bunch of other like support stuff with her body that is in place to help keep her from being overwhelmed by what she can do. Jill gets on her about improving her diet, but then later on admits that she ate the whole box of crullers other than these two. Which, I mean, as somebody who binge eats and then gets upset that Owen doesn't take care of himself, I can relate to being a control freak who is absolutely not walking the walk. So, Jill, it's not great, but I understand you. And Jill asks Ryan, why haven't you told our other sisters about what you can do? And I was like, oh my God, they don't know? Like, again, I just wasn't really keeping track of who was being told what. And Ryan says, we aren't certain they have abilities and we don't want to put them at risk. I guess. I don't know, man. I feel like they're at risk by being related to you, period. You know, I don't think there's any getting around that at this point. Everybody knows who Jordan is. Everybody's going to have to be looking at her siblings. It's just fucking how it goes, you know, like, so this is when, let's see, you're not the only prodigy in the family, Ryan. I've got this medical stuff down. I just need to learn the terminology. I can look at someone and see it all happening. It's like I just know it already, and the words in my textbooks just help me associate what I see with something I can explain to people. That's why I've been reading so many medical textbooks, which is really interesting. The idea of like, oh yeah, I have the knowledge and I can immediately tell you like what's wrong, but I can't like tell you what's wrong. You know what I mean? I don't know what that part of the body is called. I don't know what that vein is called. I don't know what this gland is. And Ryan tells her she's super proud of her and that makes Jill really happy. And they have this like sort of moment with, of, you know, sweetness between the two of them, of bonding. But then it's immediately followed up by Ryan realizing that Jill was eavesdropping and being really frustrated and like, girl, if you said anything about what you heard, that could get Jordan fired or it could get her killed. And Jill gets pretty frustrated here. She's like, I'm going to tell people. I watched Jordan toss a shark guy, and I never told anybody but you. I know you can get your computer creep on. I never told her about that. I don't understand why you guys don't trust me. And eventually, Ryan is like, okay, I think you mean well, but your maturity is lacking. Like sometimes you can be a little bit thoughtless, which is 100% true. I just don't want her to lecture me. It's giving me a complex. Did you know that I hear her scolding me when I'm doing something I'm not supposed to? That's a funny thing that I know happens to people. Like I had a therapist ask me when I'm shit talking myself, who I hear in my head. But I hear myself as a teenager. And she didn't seem to know what to do with that. I guess most people say my mother, you know, my sister. I think about what younger me would say about me today and how scathing I would be because I was a bitch. I'm still a bitch, but I was a bitch in a very different, less pleasant way. I wasn't charming about it. And yeah, what do you do when it's like the root of all of this is that I am like, I traumatized myself in a lot of ways, you know? So they have, let's see, this is when she looks at her brain. It was like fireworks displays. And she has to be like snapped out of it. She just sort of goes into it and doesn't really realize that she's done it. And Ryan is like, what's happening? And there's a moment here where she's asking Ryan, like, what about what you can do? And Ryan's like, I try to respect people's privacy. And I'm like, Ryan, you saw Douglas across the room and immediately looked up his bank account information. So no, forgive me for not really thinking that you respect people's privacy. I'm sorry, but that just rang very hollow for me. And then we have a conversation between her and Jill that was so deeply frustrating. Basically, Jill is like, you have access to like billionaire money. Why don't you just take that and give it to poor people? Just do that. And Ryan is like, I can't just, you're not like thinking it through why that wouldn't work. And she brings up some like, some odd, very specific examples, which, like, granted, life is specific. So to a point, I get what she's meaning, but it, for me, just did not hit at all. She says, if I take that politician's money, what's to say he won't do something far more evil to get it back? What if his kind-hearted wife is put on the street and becomes just like him as a result? Which I'm like, the wife of a politician who's wildly successful is absolutely never going to get put on the street. Like, that's just not happening. And if she's married to the guy, she's probably like him already. So that's just, for me, I was just like, what does that even mean? Do something far more evil to get it back? You mean, like, you know, write legislation that screws people over or take bribes? Like, what more is there? What if I give money to the poor without them doing anything to earn it? Kill me. I hated this. Poor people, you have earned all of your money and you deserve medical care and you deserve to be able to pay for a college education and you deserve to be able to pay off your car and you deserve to be able to go to the dentist without having to pay $2,600 out of pocket. Just, you know, as an example for me, because I went to the dentist today and that's how much I'm looking at for November. I 100% cannot get behind anybody being like, they didn't earn it. What if it takes away the motivation to better their own lives so that when the money's gone, they just return to what they were before? Get out of here. Get out of here. I just can't. It hurts me to see suffering and ignorance, so I work through legal means to stop what I can. Hurting someone else to help another isn't right. Again, no, I don't agree. I just straight up, none of this. Heather says, when we chat about these characters, Jill calls what she can see stuff. There's all this stuff going on. True. Garth's views have evolved quite a bit since this was written, thankfully. Well, that's good to hear. And that's the thing, like, I couldn't tell if he meant, like, this is the thing with authors. She could be making this argument and Garth doesn't necessarily believe it. This is what Ryan believes, you know? Like, I wasn't sure if this was his thinking, but it kind of felt like it was because the way that the chapter wraps up with the two of them, it seemed like Jill had internalized it and, like, gotten wise to what her sister was trying to say. But just all of this is just, you know, I'm just too much of a fucking communist now, guys. Truly. I'm like beyond socialism. I'm just like, literally, what are we doing? Just give everybody everything they need and shut the fuck up. I just am so tired of this. There's no reason not to do that. And I have no patience for any, like, I want to have more patience because I want to be able to have the conversation without immediately flipping my shit. But I just don't have it anymore. I'm just angry all the time about it. And she continues on with, like, you think you know what's best for the planet and how people, like, you don't like people who abuse animals. Will you make animal abuse a death sentence? How about taking money from people you're mad at? What about our family? And I'm like, girl, what are you doing? You're just spitting these wild for instances out of thin air. It was just a weird, you know? But anyway, she says, it's good to talk about these things. As a doctor, you'll have to make extremely hard choices about people living or dying. The sooner you look at the ethical ramifications of your actions, the better. Which is fair, you know, but it's just so different for Jill and what she does. And it's extremely annoying because, like, yeah, Ryan, but a lot of people wouldn't even be able to afford to see your sister because you just won't give them money because what if they didn't work for it? Like, whatever. And Jill finally is like, hey, so does Jordan murder people? And it's a weird moment. Ryan says, if she takes a life, I'm certain she only does it because every other option is expended. She isn't running about shooting people in cold blood. I'm sure of it. But the next thing is Jill saying, how can she do that? Just kill people in cold blood. And I was like, I thought we agreed that that wasn't what was happening, Jill. But she immediately, like, jumps back to that wording. And Ryan says, I assume she feels that those she has to kill deserve it for one reason or another. I doubt it's easy for her to do. I think that makes her the best one for the job. Killing should never be easy. And people who take pleasure in it should never be the ones allowed to make that decision. are you disappointed in her? And Jill is like, I kind of am. Yeah. And Ryan says, basically, I understand that, but we don't know the details of what's going on there. I don't feel like we should pass judgment on that at all. We both love her and trust her, and we need to believe that because we trust her, she would make good decisions here. So that sort of wraps up that part of the conversation, and they continue their like searching of the faces in the crowds, and eventually zero in on the dude on the boat. Excuse me. And then we also hear about what Decibel looks like. She's 40-something and severe looking. Her green eyes seemed devoid of any compassion, and the sunken cheeks and high cheekbones only added to her creepiness. Jill thought the woman looked like a cranky, angry skeleton with thin brown hair. Meanwhile, Torque is actually kind of attractive, and she gives him a look, and is just like, oh, word? So they find out this, I'm sorry. I said earlier that it was Lily that asked about what if he's flying, but it's Jill that asks what if he's flying. Sorry, Jill. I didn't mean to take away your credit. You have very similar energy to Lily. That's all. So they send this information over to Jordan. And as they're just chatting, Jill says something about Sister Clara. And it turns out they went to like this really strict Catholic school. And Decibel looks like this snide, ugly nun that always beat them with a measuring stick. I can't get over Catholic school, man. What on earth are we doing? I know like several people who went to Catholic school, and it's like they have shell shock from it. You know, they have PTSD from being beaten by nuns. What is this? What we want? Really? Is that what you're going for? I can't imagine that's what you're going for. So they managed to zero in on the actual boat, and the name of the boat is the Saraswati, which is that Dr. Spears's boat. That name I feel like it rings a bell, but I can't think where I know it from. But yeah, Ryan sends this information over to Jordan and basically falls back and is just like, oh God, she's like super tired. And she's like, all right, she has all the info she needs and it's up to her now. And that is the end of the chapter. So I'm wondering if they're going to start to like make the connection between Dr. Spears and Aftermath. Part of me wants that to not happen so soon because I want to see, I don't understand exactly what it is that Dr. Spears is trying to do. And I would like to see what the rest of his plans look like, just out of curiosity. But also, figuring it out doesn't mean that they can move on him, because I'm sure he's got many layers of like, you know, plausible deniability between him and whatever is going on. So it may not matter that they figure out this is his boat, you know, like who knows? And I'm saying that because I think it's his boat, but I don't remember if that's true. But yeah, so And I thought that this chapter, because the last one ended with Calamity being like, oh, we've got something planned, don't worry. I was waiting for it this chapter, and it added a lot of tension. It doesn't happen yet, and I'm still just like, what are they going to do? I have to imagine it's something with a fault line in California. But also, as they pointed out, Aftermath knows that they're zeroing in on stuff, and maybe that's exactly what he wants everybody to be expecting, and that's not what they're going to do at all. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. All right, I'm going to wrap up, but thank you very much, Heather, for commissioning this episode. I hope that you guys are enjoying the coverage, and I will be seeing you soon for another few chapters. I think the next chapters are shorter, so I'll do more than one. This one was almost a full 50 pages by itself, and I'm at time, so I guess it worked out. But yeah, I will see you soon. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.